Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop on obviously mixlr.com/WakeUpCallDT, as well as Facebook.com/Wake Live Now DT, and on YouTube.com/WakeUpCallDT. So a lot of places to listen and watch. You see these wonderful people on the screen with me right now. Caitlin Hadzimichalis, the head coach at King's College, and someone that I know from my broadcasting days with MU Courtside at Marywood University. We have Bridget Walsh here, the assistant SID at King's College. We have Amy Sokaitis, who is here with us, the head coach of Lebanon Valley, and Emily O'Donnell, an assistant coach at the Coast Guard. So first and foremost, welcome to the broadcast.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we are here today to talk about a lot of different things, a lot of topics on the mind. And so we'll go round robin and make sure that we get your thought, each of your thoughts on these topics. And if anything comes up within it, then obviously, feel free to speak up and we'll discuss that as well in case I miss something. But Caitlin, I'm going to start with you because you helped to put this awesome group together today. Tell me why Amy, Emily, and Bridget, you wanted so much for them to be a part of the discussion today.
Yeah, for sure. Coaching wise, I've known Amy probably the longest with it. And then Emily, Emily coached against her. And then she was a player at Albright. Then she coached over at Misericordia in conference. And I got to know her a little bit through Amy coaching wise. And I think she's got great energy, young up and coming, trying to, get herself out there. So great personality. I want to get Em on there. Like I said, Amy and I go way back this year, especially with everything. We've been kind of bouncing a lot of ideas off each other and trying to keep each other sane throughout the pandemic and coaching in it. So we even got to sneak out and go snowboarding a bit. So she's a good personal friend. And then Bridget, she beat us up for 4 years at DeSales, and then we were good enough to steal her over at King's. Yeah. And I think, again, great up and coming sports information director. So just want to get her out there. She knows the game and also helps our program out. So wanted to get her on here as well.
Fair enough. So Emily, tell me something about Caitlin. Why connect with Caitlin? What can you say about her? You've heard what she's had to say about each of you. What can you say about Caitlin?
She's just brought so much to my life as a coach and then personally as well. I coached against her for 2 years as an assistant at Misericordia. Connected a little bit on the court there, but then got to know her better through Amy, just at the Final Four of the convention, and then through the pandemic, again, like she said, keeping each other sane, having coaches calls, meetups where we talk through what we were doing with our teams, and she's just brought a lot to like the group that we have, and then helped me personally and like as a coach.
Awesome. Amy, what can you tell me about Caitlin as well as these snowboarding trips?
Yeah. Well, so if I'm the serious person in the room, then Caitlin and Emily are the one that lighten everything up. So we need them for that. But no, we just started talking hoops when we first met, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago now, and just kept talking. And so when everything kind of hit the fan last March, Caitlin, Emily, and then another about 4 or 5 other coaches or so, we started doing weekly Zooms just to talk about, like Emily said, anything from what you're doing with your team to what you're going through, personally. A bunch of us live alone. So it was like, hey, we have nobody around us. We need friends. Can we Zoom? And I think just leaning on each other as much as we can. And Caitlin is a new snowboarder. She's getting pretty good pretty fast. So that's pretty fun.
Awesome. Bridget, you heard Caitlin say that she had to go up against you, kind of deal with you on another side for a long time. So what's it like to be on the same team now? What can you tell me about Caitlin?
Well, I first off wouldn't have my job today without Hodge. So huge shout out to her for putting my name out there and getting me into this position in the first place. She's just got a super infectious personality, and she's so dedicated in everything she does. And you can just tell by getting any conversation with her how invested she is in the game and growing the women's game and how passionate she is. So it's super great to have gotten to know her and be on this call today.
So we have this opportunity to talk about a little bit of everything. This year's tournament, let's discuss as far as, and I'll go around the horn, and Bridget, I'm going to stay with you here first. What was your most exciting game or most exciting moment of this women's basketball tournament? What was that, moment or two that you're going to take with you?
Definitely just the increased media exposure as a sports information person. Obviously, that's something I take a lot of pride in and really pay attention to. And all the games being broadcasted through ESPN and their partner networks, ABC, being able to see all that basketball in such a short amount of time and such a national broadcasting perspective was amazing. I've never been able to watch so much basketball in such a short amount of time and be able to really just enjoy all of the different aspects of the game. Personally, I wasn't able to watch as much as I would have liked because we're in the middle of spring sports season. So we had softball and baseball and everything under the sun going on. But being able to watch like the UConn Iowa game and being able to see such young talent go head to head was probably one of my favorite moments so far of the tournament.
And what about you, Amy? What can you say was a moment or two? And Bridget, thank you for that. I mean, we'll talk about the exposure issue and how that's changed this year, but we'll talk about that coming up here. Amy, what was your favorite moment or moments of the women's tournament this year?
I mean, there was a lot. I think that we've got more parity right now in women's college basketball than we've ever had. So there's upsets or tighter games than there should be or than we think there will be. My favorite game, though, I was actually on a flight, on a United Airlines flight coming back from Washington, and I was able to watch the entire Texas-Maryland game on the plane. And I think every single person around me thought I was crazy, but I was verbally yelling at the screen. And it was just such an amazing game. Like, if I had to say what I thought the best game in the tournament was, people may disagree, but I just love the physicality and the way Texas forced their will on a really good offensive Maryland team. It was super fun to watch. So I love that game.
Awesome. Emily, what about you? What's the moment or moments for you?
One thing about the whole tournament is I loved watching all the emotions, the good and the bad. The bad hurt a little bit because you think back to your own stuff. But the one game that really stood out to me was the A&M and Iowa game. Watching that one, our coaching staff group chat was blowing up. We're like, okay, there's this much time left. What do you think they're going to do? And just talking through that, especially with such a tight game and extra time and that kind of stuff. That was a really interesting, fun game to watch.
And Hodge, for you, is there a moment or two that sticks out from this year's tournament?
Yeah, I think my favorite part, I'm on the Arie McDonald train all the way. Sign me up. Wherever that bus is rolling, I am on it. I am fired up. Let's do it. Early on, I love, like Amy said, all the parity, all the tight games, the Caitlin Clark-Paige matchup, everything else. The Maryland-Texas game was insane. I think all the games that day were insane. But when you go through and you watch Arizona, everybody was kind of counting them out early. And I remember thinking, the way they play defense, I don't know if UConn's ready for that. So not saying I called it because I didn't, but I was a little more intrigued in that matchup than I think a lot of people were giving it credit off the bat. And then you go ahead leave them out of a promo. They kind of showed you what happened when you do that. So, right. So you gotta get on the whole Arizona train. I'm in.
You know, and McDonald did. And I said before we went on here that, you know, she stole my heart too, all 5'6" of her, you know, and the just incredible play, the speedy play. And she did everything she could in the championship game, scored 22 points, the only member of Arizona's starting five to get in double figures at all. You know, I'll stay with you, Hodge, on this. Why, you know, Arie McDonald, you know, what did she do for women's basketball and what did she do for this country? Because so many of us have that feeling. We just, you know, it was almost an uncontrollable urge to root for her. You watch the game for 5 minutes and you kind of jump in her corner.
I think one of the main reasons is it was the first time we all got to see her, or the first time we heard about her, the first time she got any exposure. And one, why the heck are we waiting this long? I think if we maybe saw more games on TV, like Bridget alluded to earlier, then we could have been on this train much earlier and had a lot more fun. But I think the fact that she did come in and she was herself, she did it her way, just like Arizona themselves did it their way. I think she's knew her skill set. She didn't go above or beyond it. She did what she does. Like, she's so fast. She can snake behind the pick and rolls, and she kept her swag while she did it. I think that's what was endearing, is that, okay, she's got swag, but you can see how hard she's working on both ends of the floor. I think you hear so many people talk about being two-way players, and she proved it. So when you watch that live with someone with personality, especially when they are that little kid running around, it just makes people drawn to you for sure.
Yeah, Emily, for you, what is it about McDonald coming off of what Hodge had to say? What were your thoughts about just seeing her in the tournament, and in really the notion that because these games are not televised and because there's not enough exposure for women's athletics in general, that we had to fall in love with her over the last couple of weeks when we very well could have fallen in love with her a couple months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good thing what Hodge mentioned is she's not trying to do more than she can, and she plays both ends of the floor. So in the UConn game, is she was getting hers, but she was getting stops, and she was shutting down their best player, and she wasn't celebrating her wins big enough that she couldn't get a stop on defense. And she's also a lefty, which I'm a huge fan of lefties. That's a personal thing. But yeah, just the fact that she's an all-around solid player and she makes her teammates better. In one of the plays last night where she drove baseline or into the lane, got stuck, maybe like double or triple teams, found a shooter at the top of the key. You can't find kids that can do that, especially with her size, with those big people around her, and gets the assist there on the three in the moment where they really needed it. So that kind of stuff, the little stuff that doesn't really show up too big in the stats, that's the stuff that stands out to me for her.
Yeah, that's the thing, just being gritty and doing the things that don't show up on a stat sheet, but are extremely an integral part of winning and even staying in games. And at the end of the game, she made those last few points, and I'm sure she'll think about going 3 of 4 at the charity stripe, because if she went 4 of 4, could have tied the game and gone into overtime. Amy, what are your thoughts on Miss McDonald?
She's fast. No, watching her play, you watch her play on both ends. She's impossibly quick, and I can't fathom how she can do what she does, but it's super fun to watch. I think what makes her special, though, is that grit piece. And I think these guys kind of both mentioned it, is that, like, she talked about, I believe it was after the semifinal game, Rebecca Lobo, Holly Rose, somebody asked her about, her shooting percentage and how she's drastically increased that over the last couple of years. And she said, well, I shoot hundreds of thousands of shots. I shoot 1,000 shots a day. Like, for the people in the back, someone needs to hear that. Like, that's how you get better. And she wasn't scared to take the chance to get better. And I think that, her obviously believing in Adia Barnes and their relationship was amazing to watch. And just like every coach wants that with at least one player in their career. And, kudos to them for finding it, but just this really special player. Looking forward to following her career going forward.
And Bridget, for you, so many great things said about Aari McDonald here. What are your thoughts?
Well, obviously everybody said lots of great thoughts that I'm just going to continue to echo, but I think a lot of it, and us not being able to hop on the Aari McDonald train so early, Pac-12 West Coast, not ideal for us West Coast people, or East Coast, excuse me. So that definitely didn't help things out, but finally being able to see her and just hearing her story of how she was able to help build that Arizona program to where they are today. I think any basketball player that's gone through 4 years of a building program can resonate with that and see all the work that she's put in to help grow that program and put them back on the map, get them back to the championship, and finally establish Arizona again as a good powerhouse in women's basketball.
We heard the name Adia Barnes, Coach Barnes, on Arizona at the end of this semifinal game against UConn is excited. She is celebratory. She is saying things to her team about people not believing in them and knowing that didn't matter. And we did it and we got here. Bridget, I'll stay with you for this. Should a coach be apologizing for, in the heat of the moment, not negatively swearing at anybody, toward anybody in any type of malicious way? She's like, we did it. You know what I mean? Like, I would be, as I think I think we would all be, if especially that feeling of the world saying you can't, and then they did. And even if they didn't, no matter what it is, in that huddle, that's your team. And in a world where we can't hide from anything, and basically at this point, we probably feel like there's cameras in everybody's house, like a reality show. Adia Barnes celebrated. Should she be apologizing for being happy and telling her team, we did this, and who cares what anybody thinks? Bridget, I'll start with you. I think this is a ridiculous question that any woman should have to answer, but guess what?
Sorry.
We live in a world where things need to change. So let's talk about the fact that I don't believe Coach Barnes needs to be sorry.
No, definitely not. I mean, like she said in the post-game interview, that was supposed to be a private moment of her sharing her excitement and her passion for the game and passion for her team with her team. yes, we're in the age of social media and cameras everywhere. So of course it was caught on camera and plastered all over the internet, but being able to just enjoy that moment, enjoy all the hard work and dedication that's been put into that program. And like I think she said in yesterday's interview, it was a trying year. It was a difficult year. She had a kid. She went through all this with her team. So for her to have to go out and allegedly apologize for what she did, no, not at all. She was being herself, and that's all she's ever been, as she said.
Amy, for you, you're a head coach. You understand that there is emotion and people are allowed to be excited and happy and unapologetic. Seeing people demand her to apologize or say, my daughter was watching that, what was your response to all that?
First of all, you had to zoom in and listen to the commentator to even know what she really said. So saying my daughter was watching that, well, maybe you shouldn't have had your daughter watch it 16 times then. But also, I think a coach in a huddle, if you want to come in my huddle, feel free anytime you want, but my huddle's between me and my team. So anything you hear, that was your own choice to come in there. I think as long as she, can talk to her players like that, her players aren't offended by that, then by all means, that is a huddle. And I think Hodge is going to agree with me on here. If you come into my huddle, then you're going to have to deal with what's in my huddle. And I talk to my team, we get passionate and we get crazy about things. And, I by no means think, I tweeted about that, I by no means think she should apologize for anything or should feel she has to apologize. My dad coached for 30 something, 40 years. And he had some choice words he's never once apologized for. And I don't think that you should have to.
And I agree with you. And you bring it up, like you said, your dad, for as long as he coached. We don't hear this on the men's side. Since I was 4 or 5 years old, I've been reading Jim Boeheim's lips here in Syracuse. I know what he says. I know clearly what he's saying. So Emily, I'll go to you next to extend this. Men are not apologizing for swearing in a huddle ever. And I've never experienced it. I played basketball growing up. And no matter what was said there or in our locker room, like that was what was happening. And you could say what you wanted to say and feel how you want to feel. Why does a woman have to apologize for something that a man has done for decades?
Dan, I just want to go off what you were saying. Lip reading, professional sports, men's sports. If you look at that stuff, how many different words they're saying, what they're saying, and you can't hear it, but you know what they're saying. And like Bridget mentioned, there are cameras everywhere, but that is a private moment with her team that they just accomplished something that nobody thought they could do. And she's expressing her emotions, which as women's coaches and in women's sports, we constantly get told that, oh, they're to this or to that when we express emotion. And you see it from men's sports where, oh, he's a fiery coach. Oh no, she's a bossy coach. And just the language difference in describing how people coach or play, it's with the players too. The players expressing emotion. And that's something that I love about the sport. It's why I coach. It's for those feelings. And you don't see that with men's players. Men's players, and not saying that they can't do this, but they don't get called out for it. And that's the problem. That's what we're seeing here with a great coach talking to her team. Should not have to apologize. Shouldn't apologize. Shouldn't even be asked to. It shouldn't be looked at like that. That's what I have to say on that.
And Emily, you bring up, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about the juxtaposition of when a men's team loses and you see them cry and you hear the commentators go, wow, it's such a tough game, tough emotion. And then you see the women cry and it's like, oh, well, that they're emotional. The difference between saying, oh, these guys really felt that. And well, this is what they do. They're supposed to cry. And it's just like that. It's like that. It's so instilled in the culture that it's like it's sexist language, but people treat it like it's normal language because they're like, well, you know what I mean. And it's like, no, I don't. Like if I lost a game, I'm going to cry. If I'm a donkey and I lost a game, I'm going to cry. I mean, that's just regular emotion. Many basketball games, we fought to the end. There was a game where I hit 2 threes, missed the third one. And I still think about if I had taken that shot, like the first 2 shots I took, I just believed in myself. I let them fly. The third shot, I said, I have to make it. I have to make it. I have to make it. And that was my mistake. When I play basketball, I can't think. So I said I had to make it. I took it and I was off to the left side, and it's those, you're supposed to be emotional if you care about something, but the whole, like, if a man shows his emotion, well, and there's so many different sides to this too, because if a man shows his emotion, he's weak. And so, I mean, it's just that it's the language of it, and it's watching the games and seeing a team like UCLA lose and a guy's crying, and then see, South Carolina lose and there's a woman crying. And I'm like, they're human beings. They just lost the chance to win a championship. What would you do in their spot? So your language should be, wow, they fought to the end. They gave their all. This really sucks. That language should be same throughout. Hodge, thoughts on Coach Barnes and thoughts on what we're talking about?
Oh, I think her being herself, and you, again, Bridget alluded to it, her being herself in all of her post-game interviews and pre-game interviews. You show me that moment and I'm signing up to play for her immediately, because it's real, because that's what happens. I've been on a billion teams since I've grown up. And to kind of tie in what you're talking about, Dan, is that's what sports teams do. It's what athletes do. They live with emotion. They live with passion. They play that way. At least any of the ones that care, are doing it the right way. So when you see a coach doing that, again, she played in the WNBA. She played in college. She had this career. She literally lives and breathes it. So for her to be questioned, it's not saying, yeah, no, guys should be questioned on this too when they coach. It's no, this is what coaches and athletes do. And like Amy said, if her team knows that that's her spot, that's her spot. Let her roll with it. And I agree. I don't think that there should be some type of double standard in that sense. Because I agree with you too, where, yeah, men should be able to have emotions. They should be able to have vulnerable points as well. Like Adia Barnes, she had a vulnerable point in a positive way, and that should be celebrated. And that's what her team bought into. That's why they're there. That's why they got to where they got to this year. That's how it should be all the time. And nobody should question that. Men, women, child, otherwise, like, it just shouldn't happen.
And we're going around the horn here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, and these wonderful women that gave me the opportunity to have this conversation that I want to thank very much. Again, we have Amy Sokaitis, the head coach of Lebanon Valley, as well as Emily O'Donnell, the assistant coach at Coast Guard, Bridget Walsh, the assistant SID at King's College, and Caitlin Hadzimichalis, known as Hodge, the head coach of King's. So Hodge, I'll stay with you on this. We've seen a lot of things over the years with women's athletics. And one of the things that was brought up by Bridget when I said, what was your favorite part of the tournament? It was beautifully put, Bridget, and it was also incredibly sad. What's your favorite part? That the games were on. I mean, that's insane, because what I grew up knowing as a kid playing basketball and picking up a basketball when I was 3, everything that I knew was I got to watch every game. The men's tournament would come on. My favorite part is the round of 64, because it's games from literally noon to midnight, and they're all on TV, whether it's True TV or TBS or TNT or CBS, every game is on. And I know back in the day, like a couple games weren't on, but the men have always had more than the women. If UConn was on, you could see it. But outside of UConn, maybe a Stanford or Tennessee with Pat Summitt, you're not seeing the game. And you have to literally check a box score and just follow like the screen to see like who's leading in the game. Hodge, I'll start with you here on the great point that Bridget brought up. Why are we just talking about the fact that we got to see every game for the women's tournament?
I don't know. I'm glad the whip around coverage is gone. Same thing. That's my favorite round, is that we got to see it all. And I don't know what took this long. I know it's something that, again, like in our community at the convention, this is stuff we talk about all the time, but finally there's some outside scrutiny coming in finally, whether you go to the Stanford strength coach who first kind of blew the whistle on the setup of the weight room and the training facilities out of the tournament. And then you have Sidonia Prince using her TikTok and Twitter and her social media audience to kind of exacerbate that problem. You get more eyes on it, but I don't know what's taken this point to get it on TV and get it accessible, because the numbers show that it works. So I don't understand why they're having to keep fighting this hill. You can't draw out of an empty cup. So if you're going to give them something to work with, there's going to be a product. It's the old, if you build it, they will come. It's there. It's built. Just put it on TV, put it on a platform, put it out there. Clearly there's interest. And I don't know why it took so long.
Emily, seeing the men's tournament just get plastered everywhere forever and see little blips of the women's, it was like every men's game, 2 women's games. And it almost is built in such a way that March Madness was all about the men. And, oh yeah, maybe, you should watch the championship game for the women. What can you say to that? It was promoted that way. It was facilitated that way. And if you have the media and television itself telling people care about the men, care a little bit about the women, if they're speaking that verbiage, then obviously people are going to sometimes toe that. They're going to follow that like sheep. And they kind of created the notion that women's athletics isn't as exciting. And so we've waited forever to see it, which is insane. And I still feel like we're only seeing it today because they've been pushed publicly and maybe not because they felt like they needed to.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is I played women's basketball, and growing up, you couldn't watch the big games. You would watch the men's games, and my dad would point out stuff here and there, things to work on, but you would only see the semifinals maybe in the championship, just like you said. And I think I was still in college, and the men's games were blowouts, and the women's games were hard-fought, tight games that were fun to watch. And I'll bring friends in, watch the game in my room or anything like that, but we shouldn't only be able to see those final games. And growing up, like as a young women's basketball player, that's the stuff you want kids to watch. You want them to watch these athletes who are giving their all in these games, whether it's the round of 64, which again, it's great from noon to midnight watching games. But when you're only watching the men's games, these young kids, these young girls are saying, well, why aren't there girls playing? Something like that. And it's not necessarily something I thought, but I saw it with other people. And coaching young kids now, like a young AAU program, they could watch it this year. And I had them and their parents texting me saying, oh, did you see this game? So-and-so said this about that team. That's the stuff you want to continue to build the game, to grow the game from these young kids. They have to see the women's games and girls and women promoting the sport. And that's how we get better as a program, as the NCAA, as women's coaches, by promoting what we have to build the next generation.
And coming off of that, an awesome point, Emily, and thank you. Amy, for you, has this been a systemic issue that was almost facilitated and created, where if you don't put the games on television, you almost build the notion that nobody wants to watch them and that they're not important and that they don't matter? So it's kind of this vicious cycle of you've told America that nobody cares, so then nobody cared, and then you say, well, no, we're not putting them on TV because nobody cares. So it's almost like they created the narrative to give themselves an excuse. Do you feel that?
Yeah, you look at U.S. women's national team, look at women's tennis, look at, most recently with the WNBA, you now can purchase a package to watch all the games, right? I'll use the WNBA as kind of my example. There's not a team within 2 hours of me. So I can't just, have season tickets and go to games all the time. Makes it really hard for me to then be a fan of a particular team, to like build a relationship with a team if I can't watch them on TV, nor can I go to the games. And also their games are like 2:00 on a Tuesday. So this is just like a systemic issue that never allows a person that isn't truly invested in it, like coaches, like we're going to go out of our way to find games. But my neighbor, right, who likes basketball, likes sports, wants to watch, doesn't know the avenues. They're not easily accessible. It's not, an obvious route for them. And then I think the second part, like, this is probably an unpopular opinion amongst women's basketball coaches, but I don't think we do a good job with how we manage the Final Four and our locations of convention. We're in Nashville, nobody knows that there's a women's basketball tournament going on. We're in Tampa, nobody knows. We're in New Orleans, nobody knows. Being in cities, putting ourselves in Denver when we were there like 9 years ago, everybody knew that's what we were there for. Columbus, everybody knew that's what we were there for. I know there's a cold, smaller cities, guys, sorry. But being in places where we can run the convention and run the national championship and be the show in town, is a huge marketing piece that we've completely and utterly ignored, basically. I started talking about this right after Denver, so 9 years ago, when I was like, wow, like the turnout was great. People wanted to be here. People at every restaurant were like, hey, are you here for the women's basketball tournament? People knew. We go out in New Orleans and nobody knows what we're there for. We're just another group in New Orleans for whatever, So I think that being strategic about those parts to get people in stands and making it accessible to the young girl in the crowd and young boys in the crowd too. And then I think getting it on TV, you, like Hodge said, like if you build it, they will come. We've proven that people will watch women's sports and will love women's sports when they have the opportunity to watch it.
Yeah, and I think that, again, something very well put is think about where your strongholds are. Think about where you can be effective from the inside out and where people have that love for the game to try and build off of that instead of just trying to force it in somewhere. Bridget, what are your thoughts? Because, you brought this up, the fact that we didn't get to watch these games and, the notion of, well, they don't have good viewership. They don't make the TV stations money, but making it cyclical, making it so hard to watch it. And then the point that was just brought up that, if a WNBA game is on a Tuesday at 2 p.m., most people are working. So you can't turn the game on. So if you take women's athletics, if you take women's basketball or whatever it may be, and you put it in a place where it's a bad time, it's a bad day, it's hard to get it on your channel, you got to buy this extra package. If you set up a bunch of barriers for something to fail and then it fails, it's almost like you get that, well, see, we told you so. And it's like, no, you didn't set any of those barriers for the NFL or the NBA. You set them for the WNBA. So what are your thoughts?
Definitely. And I'm wrapping up my master's right now. So a lot of this is what we're talking about, one of my classes. Obviously, the NCAA men's tournament is a huge revenue driver for the NCAA across the whole spectrum. It facilitates so much of what they do. But so much is also given to them and so much is invested into it. And you saw it this year and through the pandemic, like the WNBA rose to the occasion. They were on TV. People were sitting at home, working from home, and were able to watch these games and enjoy it. And my social media feeds have been all hyping up women's basketball across the board because it's been accessible. People have been able to sit down and watch it, and they've been put on times that people aren't just, oh, I have like an hour here to watch during my lunch break. They're able to sit down after dinner, enjoy and invest into the game. And a lot of the naysayers were saying, oh, well, the UConn powerhouses of the world and the top programs are dominating the game. So why would we tune in to watch a bunch of blowouts? We're seeing that change drastically, especially this year, all the upsets, all the close calls down to the wire. That's because people are investing and truly engaging in women's basketball right now. And to point out that people don't want to watch the game, you're just ignorant at that point. All the data is coming out right now to show that these games right now this year, the 2021 NCAA Women's Championships, are seeing record number of viewers. Well, that's because you put them on national broadcast channels for people to actually be able to watch them. Before it was ESPN3 and ESPNU. Like, you have to have specific packages, like we've said before, to go out and find our way to find it. So this year has been astronomical for the women's game, and I'm just so excited to finally be invested in it full sense, and be able to see how much it's going to grow just in a year from now.
What is, Bridget, I'll stay with you. What is the most glaring issue with women's athletics right now?
The most.
You know what, the sad part is there could be 10 things that come out of your mouth, and that is totally okay, because we need to discuss it. That's why we're here today. I am not here to keep my mouth shut. I think if you want to make changes, you got to talk about change, and then you got to do something about it. So what do you think?
Definitely. I'm going to stick with the media just because that's kind of where I am, and just the language that we're seeing across the social medias. I think I saw one of my professors, like colleagues, tweeted something about SportsCenter, ESPN tweeted a graphic saying Baylor has made it to the Final Four for the first time since like 1970. No, that's not true. Baylor men. So I think the language and the clarity and across all media, social media, broadcast media, print media, that's, I think, one of the most glaring, because like we've seen this year, you expose people to women's basketball and to the game and women's athletics in general. People will watch it. It's exciting. It's a different aspect to the game. You see the girls, the women thinking a lot more. Like there's just so many different aspects to that game that isn't seen until it's exposed. So I think probably the media and the language.
Fair enough, and makes a lot of sense and is very true. And I think there's a lot to dive into just from saying the media and the language. Amy, what about you? What is the most glaring issue and or issues in women's athletics right now?
Oh, well, I mean, it's not, there's nothing about it that's equitable at this point, right? And it's clear as day. I mean, the NCAA tournament really put that on blast, like having two bubble setups rather, and seeing the haves and have-nots and how that worked out. But I think there are some interesting solutions to it that we haven't even talked about. So not promoting, gambling, because we don't do that as college coaches, but the average sports watcher enjoys gambling on sports. That is the reality. That's how the NFL is, why the NFL has all the fantasy leagues, and NBA has fantasy leagues and things like that. So the availability, I didn't know that maybe it was available before, but I didn't know. Like some of my friends, like college teammates and their husbands or boyfriends or whatever, they all gambled on the women's tournament this year, like the last few rounds, and it created excitement. They then were invested. I think in sport, we have to remember, it's not about male and female. We like competition. Like Americans, especially like the underdog, but we like competition. It's something that we enjoy. It doesn't matter if I'm watching, a bunny race. I'm going to be cheering for somebody in this race. Like I'm going, it's the camp thing where you're like in the like beanbag sack trying to jump somewhere and everyone's getting crazy on the sidelines. We enjoy that. That's what we have to sell. I would argue that it is intentionally not being sold right now. And I think that is our biggest challenge. And the problem is it's not being sold by the people in charge.
And from what you said, it brings up to me when you talk about people that are betting as fans, that when you see the commercials, and this also goes into what you just said, Bridget, when you see the fill out your bracket commercial, it says fill out your bracket, but it's the men's bracket.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two brackets, there's two tournaments going on, but all of the powers that be or whatever, they're saying, hey, if you're going to fill out your bracket, do it here. But there's no conversation about betting on the women's game, the women's bracket. Who do you think is going to win the women's tournament? It's always about the men. And so in that case, you're again telling people generationally that when we say fill out the bracket challenge, we're telling you to fill out the men's bracket challenge, that the women's one doesn't really matter. Who cares? And if you keep speaking that language, then that's where you cause the issue, because it's just like you said, Bridget, it wasn't that Baylor hasn't made it since 1971. It was that the Baylor men's team hasn't made it. So if you speak in this way where you tell everybody that this college hasn't done this, or this is the bracket, or this, whatever, if you speak in that sense and you tell everybody, well, we're only talking about the men, this is what it is. If you say that that's the baseline and you forget the women in the promotion, which obviously women, Arizona talked right about that. When you forget somebody in a promotion, then you're creating the habit that when I'm filling out my bracket, I'm not filling out a men's and a women's bracket. I'm filling out the bracket, which is only the men's bracket, according to everybody that's promoting it. Emily, your take on this. What is the biggest issue in your opinion of women's athletics right now?
I think, like you started off, it could be 10 different things. But the qualifying term of women's, where you don't need a qualifying term of men's, across sports in general, especially with the tournament, especially with the brackets. If you go to fill out a bracket, it's like, oh, also, did you know that this last tab, if you keep clicking, you could maybe get to the women's bracket to fill it out? Because I've done it. I've looked at it. Pick a winner here, like, see what you think, and not having that. And in a personal friend group chat, my friends who played women's college basketball, oh, did you fill out your bracket? Yeah. Okay. Well, did you fill out your women's bracket? The qualifying term there is women's, and it should be women's and men's, and it should be women's tennis, men's tennis, women's basketball, men's basketball, swimming, men's swimming. Why isn't it that way? You know, why do we need the qualifier for women's? And just having the men's as the automatic. That's what we assume. And Bridget made the comment of Baylor. I was like, my first thought was, that's wrong. Because I think like they just won. You know, I was at that game because that's how we think, and we have changed that within ourselves and our immediate groups, but it needs to be an overarching change where you say men's and women's, or you say basketball. Oh, which team? Okay, so we ask. We don't assume that it's the men's team. So yeah, my initial thought was Bridget's comment. That's wrong. They just won. That's that. So that's the title, the qualifier.
I think, you know, every point, media and the language, as well as, you know, the qualifying term, as well as, you know, saying that, you know, Amy was talking about with the bracket. Oh, I didn't even know I could bet on this, or I didn't know I could do that. And being able to see it on television and having it in front of you. And Emily said, having to click through everything to maybe somehow, some way, 15 clicks in, get to the women's bracket. Hodge, you know, all of these make sense, and they all are an every year issue. So what can you add to it, or what do you want to say about it from your point of view?
Yeah, no, I think you guys all had points, because I was going to bring up the gambling part of it, the availability to have fantasy teams for the WNBA, having the ability to find brackets and fan duels and all that kind of stuff, drafting, whatever it is, to find ways to incorporate it into the daily, everyday person's life, like you mentioned, is a big deal. I think the overarching one, though, like Emily said, is just stop thinking as women's sports as secondary. We're like, oh, that's nice, this is real, but like the women's game, you guys can do this. Or it's kind of, unless it's sexualized or unless it's for someone else's entertainment, it can't just be what it is. Because everybody who ever talks or trashes women's basketball, it's always, oh, well, they can't dunk, or you hear Shaq talking about dropping the rim or doing whatever. When, if anybody who actually watches basketball, women's basketball is the most pure version of the game, and I'll fight anybody on it, because there isn't any high flying. Like, yeah, sure, there's a bunch of people who can dunk, but talk to all the NBA guys who are getting coached by your Becky Hammonds or your Swing Cashes who are involved in everybody like that. It's the angles, it's the IQ, it's the execution of everything. And I think people try to compare the men's game and the women's game, and they're different. And it's, what are you watching it for? You know what I mean? Whether it's basketball or soccer, there's more tactical, there's more athleticism. It's okay, you don't have to like women's basketball, but you don't have to go out and trash it immediately because they can't do something that they assume, like Emily said, that men's is the baseline, men's is the primary. Yeah. Well, you're talking to like 4, if you count me, obviously, like 4 previous athletes. And when we think our baseline is, okay, I think back to my athletic experience. So I don't think of it as men's or women's. It's like, no, my automatic is women's. So other people have to understand, like Emily was saying and making that point, is it gets to be what it is. And you can't just deem one primary and one secondary. They're their own thing, and they have to be treated as such. And okay, yeah, maybe that worked for the men's tournament, but or men's sports or men's professional teams. There's different ways to do it, and there's different ways to market. And if you have Draymond going on rants that women have gone on for a long time, it's the put your money where your mouth is and find the ways that the women's game is unique and let it be what it is. Stop trying to make it all these other things.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's, you said something when you said, if it's not sexualized. As a man, I've had people tell me, well, I don't watch the women's game because I'm not attracted to them.
Right.
And I don't even know how to respond to that, because I don't watch the men's game for that either. You know what I mean? Like, not watching sports to be attracted to anybody. I'm watching sports to see somebody, you know, evolve, grow, overcome, the underdog story that we talked about here. Like, I don't watch a game to be attracted to anything. And it's just, I mean, do you say that when somebody has a beautiful voice? Wow, they can sing like an angel, but I'm not attracted to her or him. Like, it just, I don't get, like, talent is talent, and that's not what you're there for. And I think, again, we're talking about kind of overarching the language. Why do we have to call it women's athletics? Why are we speaking about women this way? Why do we say that besides being good basketball players, they have to be girls that we want to bring to a dance? Like, what does this have to do with anything? And I think that, but it's put in our society and people are habitual. And if you say, I say it takes 3 weeks to create a habit, good or bad. And for years and decades, we've created this habit in our society that women have to climb up this giant hill just to prove to, oh, well, if they dunk, I might watch it. Or if she's cute, I might watch it. Or, if I don't know, if she swears, whatever it may be, but you're not asking that for men. You're not asking them to do anything. If a guy is on a breakaway and he lays it in and they win the game, nobody's saying he should have dunked it. So it just, I guess to me, what pains me and breaks my heart is, as a man, I cannot tell you the times that someone has said to me, oh, I watch basketball. I love basketball. Well, not women's basketball. And I don't get how you can love a sport halfway. So
Preach.
to see the positive of it, Hodge, why do you love your job? Why are you in this? Why are you in the world of sports? What are you hoping to accomplish?
I think it's anybody who's played. I forget who said it earlier about the feeling you get when you play, of the battling through something and then you accomplish it, or you create a common bond with teammates, coaches, personnel around it. I think for me, it boils down to relationships, just period, because you want to feel those things, whether it is a relationship with yourself, realizing you can overcome adversity. I always wanted to be around sports because of what it taught me about myself and people around me. I think there's no faster way to find out what somebody's made of than putting them on a field in a crunch time and figure out who's on board or who isn't, or when things are going well, who's equally as invested, who wants to do what, how are they going to be in this situation. So it's always kind of been like the litmus test for me of who am I around and who am I, am I who I say I am? It depends. And now, especially being a coach, it's the little kids. It's you're playing at camp and trying to find, our junior best player was a little kid at camp. And the fact that I get to coach her now, and she's so just as competitive as she was when she was in 5th grade, and she was going and just terrorizing other tiny humans. And watch that growth is an extreme example, but you get that all of the time in our profession. So to get these natural, organic ways to see people rise and fall and figure out who they are, that's it. Why would I want to sit behind a desk and crunch numbers? No thanks. Give me people, give me chaos. Instead of all tournament, I want chaos and violence, and we got it in the tournament, and that's what my job is in a far less it's chaotic, and I love that. I thrive in that.
And I love that control chaos, we always call it. So Emily, for you, why be in the sports world? Why are you so passionate about it?
Well, I say it pretty often is I have 2 degrees I don't use because I fell in love with coaching. And I have 2 reasons. Personally, it was very hard on me when my career ended, and coaching gives me those emotions. Coaching gives me the highs and the lows, which the lows are low and the highs are high, and you ride that roller coaster, and that's what it is. With this year, more than any before, it's that roller coaster, and you go to work every day hoping for the wins. And you come home at night and you try and figure out how you could have gotten lost better, those things. And then the second reason is, like how I said, the people, like these people right here, and the people I interact with every day, my head coach, my players. I genuinely love what I do because I get to see a freshman grow to a senior. I get to have that relationship after they graduate, and they keep me updated on what they're doing in the fleet. And I mean, with Coast Guard, or careers for you civilian folks, but what they're doing, and they're doing amazing things. That's part of the reason I love Division III is they're people and students and athletes. They are doing it all, and I get to see this one little section of their life and help them through life using basketball, because that's what was done for me through my coaches, my teammates. I couldn't ask for a better career, and I'm very proud to be a women's basketball coach.
I am, you know what, I'll tell you, if I didn't love basketball today, like you're making me want to be a coach right now. I'm going to apply to all the teams, but be like, Hodge, I'm coming down. So, but, and now I want to join the Coast Guard, Emily. Thank you for that. But, but Amy, what can you tell me about why you love the world of sports and what keeps you in it? What keeps you involved? What keeps you passionate?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of the world of sports, I think we all probably go back to the same thing. We all love to compete. You know, we're overly competitive people. I joke that like my assistant and I will race up the stairs still, you know, and she played for me 5 years ago, and so we're super competitive. But I think in terms of coaching and why I love it, and I think what I continue to get out of it is sort of what we're talking about here. It's we live in a world where we need more women who are confident in themselves and are strong and are going to fight for what they believe in. And I think we have a very unique opportunity to teach that. I think we get to put people in very adverse situations and help them work together and work individually and get through those moments. And it's, you know, the same thing as when you're up for a job and it's the third time you've been passed over for a promotion for some guy that's less than you. And you know, are you going to go in and say something because, you know, we taught you to fight for what you want, or are you just going to be like, well, this is just how it is? And so I think that we uniquely get to build that character. And I love that. I think it's amazing. Like I've had an opportunity to coach some incredible young women that are doing amazing things with their lives. And I love seeing that, just job growth, personal growth, you know, those types of things. I think, you know, as coaches, you know, we get our highs and lows from the games, but I think that long-term is what keeps you in it.
Yeah, you know, and Amy, I want to stay with you here for a second. This might be crazy for people to hear that aren't involved in the world of sports, but that, you know, you talk about, and Emily talked about too, you got those highs and then you got those lows. But from being like, from my point of view, playing growing up and then being a broadcaster and just being around it and building relationships with the people that are on the floor and on the field all the time, I know the lows hurt, but in a weird way, does it not like make you more passionate? Because when you feel that low, it kind of like, because it hits you in the gut, it's like, well, you know, you still love it. Because I tell people all the time, like there's a stark difference that you will find out really quick when you go to do something in your life, professionally or personally, of if you love it or if you think you love it. And when you lose, you know, you love it because you're probably sitting there like in like 2 minutes after you lose, maybe a second after you lose, going, what are we going to do different next year? Like, is the low in some weird way almost like a high? I guess
it's addicting. So yes, I would say, yeah, it's addicting. I think that you learn more from the lows. I would say, like, I remember more details of big losses in my playing and coaching career than I do of really big wins. And I think that you learn so much from those moments. I think you realize, hey, you know, we could have done this, or, you know, sometimes you lose and you just want the better team, but you know, you gave it your all. The ones that hurt you is you're like, you know, I don't feel like I didn't prepare us well enough, or we didn't give it our all. Like those are the ones that like break your heart. The other ones are moments that you grow from. And I think that, yeah, I think the loss is a little bit of addicting. Like, how do we get better? What's the next thing? How do we grow? And so I think coaching in general, like I've been saying this for the longest time. My dad coached my whole life, so I've been around it my whole life. You have to be like a little bit crazy to want to coach college athletics, like just like a screw or two loose in there, because it is this like constant roller coaster. But, you know, in the off season it's great, but at the same time, like by the time October rolls around, we're already like, let's go, come on, we're ready to start, come on. So, you know, we get right back to it. So yeah, I think that it's definitely, the lows are not really truly low. You know, I think when you stop caring about losing, you probably should hang it up. But I think that learning from those moments is awesome.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And I got another thought in my brain. And Bridget, I want to hear what you have to say about this before we head into rapid fire. Why be a part of it? Why be connected to it? And I think Hodge said it, that's, you know, she's happy that you're on the staff because you're one of the up and coming stars of this sports world. So what can you tell me about why you're in it?
Well, definitely starts from some of my earliest memories. I grew up in a sports household, and my memories are sitting on the couch watching Notre Dame football games with my dad. So just growing up in that environment and wanting to continue that, like, sports is addicting, like everybody said. Like, you have to want to be there, and you love the highs and the lows and all of the emotions and thrills of being in athletics. to playing in college and playing throughout my whole life. Like sports is where it's at, people. Like if you're not on the train, hop on. And I think I hopped into the sports info side of things, like growing up and seeing people write about our game and covering our sports, a whole lot of men, and that's messed up. I went to the high school championships tournament for the girls basketball a couple weeks ago, and the whole table of sports writers and media and officials in the PIAA, all men covering a women's championship game. That's just, I think that's what drives me every single day to come in and just deliver the story from a woman's perspective. Like we have a bunch of boss ass women's basketball coaches sitting here, like,
I'm not going to ask you
coaching women.
for that. I think it's fine.
Perfect. Bring it on. Good. We have a bunch of boss ass women coaching women. That's how it should be. So how can you just get me fired up? Go ahead. And I think being in sports, it shows off that being able to dive in, and especially in the Division III, as we all know, you get to see those kiddos grow up. And me covering a bunch of different sports, not just women's basketball, you have all those extra kiddos to love up on and watch them grow into actual people. They come in scared little freshmen, and now they're like adults thriving the world. Some of them are coaching, some of them are freaking nurses and PAs. Like there's so much more than just the sport. And I think that's my favorite part, is seeing people translate what they learn and all the life lessons they learn on the court, on the field, into life is probably my favorite part.
And it's amazing. And I will echo you on my show very plainly. There are a lot of boss ass women out there. So before we get to rapid fire, going through this year was not just the normal uphill battle of athletics for women, but for everyone, being in a pandemic and being taken away from things that we love. I can honestly tell you that the thing that kind of hit home the most for me, kind of hit my gut, was I do a lot with high school kids, and I do shows once a month, and I go to like the neighborhood of where the high school is and to a restaurant in that neighborhood, and the kids go out there every month. And so once a month we're, West Genesee here, Liverpool here, CNS there. And I never thought in 1,000,000 years, 2,000,000 years, that I would not be able to do a live event in a restaurant with the kids. That like I would have to like be told, well, they're not playing sports, and even if they are, you can't speak to them, and they're not allowed to go anywhere, and we're not allowed to open the restaurant. And so that was the strangest thing to me. Bridget, for you, what did you learn about yourself during this pandemic? How have you grown?
Wow, it's a loaded question. Like you said, like not being able to be out there doing what you love and being able to like talk to high school kids or go physically see a game in person. I think I learned a lot of how much how passionate I am and how driven I am to just continue to grow in my field, grow as a person. And obviously I had a lot of time to sit and think about where I want to go in the future. And I think being able to continue to fight for what I want and pursue all these passions that I have is, loss of words. I think the pandemic's allowed me to realize, like, pinpoint where I want to go and how I want to get there. So I think just really career driven right now at the age of 24. So very career focused.
Where are you going, Bridget? Where's the clarity? Where are you going? Where are you heading?
As for right now, I really love the Division III aspect of things. And I had there were opportunities to maybe settle down and stay home and like coach high school basketball. But I think right now, the Division III, I'm a D3 baby through and through. Played Division III, worked in Division III. I want to stay in Division III. And I think pursuing a career in the sports info world for right now in Division III is where it's at.
Hodge, I think you need to rework the contract for Bridget after this. Make sure she stays. So
trying very hard.
So Amy, for you, what did you learn about yourself during this pandemic?
What did I learn about myself? I think, well, not just the pandemic. I think that we had a interesting, to say the least, last 13 or 14 months. I think for one, I learned who my road dogs were. A couple of them around here. You learn who you can count on and who you really, you fit with, but also you really value when they challenge maybe an opinion you have. I think also I learned where I was willing to stick my neck out on some things. I think that we've been, sometimes I'm passive with not necessarily my program, but other parts of our campus community or in the area. And I figured out that I don't want to be that anymore. Talking to a lot of coaches at other schools and maybe higher levels who have been in it longer, and in kind of where what you fight for. And so I think we did a lot this year, and spending a lot of time not just talking about basketball, but talking about life and X's and O's is less important than the social justice world that we're not living in. And so really having those conversations and pushing those boundaries is important to me. And I think taking that next step as a coach, I think it's been very X's and O's in basketball and like relational, but not relational about heavy stuff. And we made it heavy, and I think that was awesome.
Do you think we're getting anywhere?
I don't know. I asked my dad, this is probably in like August, I said, because he's got a bunch of history degrees and things, and he's read all the books. I said, when we're out of the pandemic, do you think people will stop caring? During the pandemic, people are home, they've got more time to watch the 24-hour news cycle, things like that. And his point was, some will, others won't. There may be less action, like immediate action that's on the news, but I think that we've started to change some of the mindsets and the way someone approaches it. So I think things will get better, but I think getting better it has to be a battle. Like it's something we can't stop talking about. We need to be talking about, 2 Black women coaching in the Final Four. And we need to be talking about, the George Floyd, trial that's going on now, right? Like we need to be talking about those things. It's really easy to get distracted. And I will call out D3 in a less positive way on this one. They are so high academically motivated that sometimes they forget about the rest of the world. And I think constantly having those conversations with your players is really important, because I know that if we're not having the conversations with them, not a lot of people are.
And then, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And there's a lot to, like you said, there's a lot that we have been forced to look at being at home that didn't start happening this year. It's been happening for a long time. It's just now it's in front of us. And so now the question is, what are we going to do with it now that we can't hide from it, so to speak? Emily, for you, what did you learn about yourself during this time?
I learned that I don't like working from home anymore.
That was such a.
I love my roommate though; she's great.
I just like how you looked around, like almost like blink twice if you feel safe. It was like.
She's laughing, so it's fine. She doesn't hate me. I learned that trolley racing and cornhole is really interesting when there's nothing else on TV, and I still love sports. But I learned that it's the people. It's the people that, as much as I tell people I'm not a people person, these people know I am. It's the people that keep you going. It's the people that make you want to stick your neck out. It's those people that make you want to step up because you can, and they may not be able to. It's the people that make you want to go to work every day. It's the people that make you want to jump on a call and talk about why, your why, my why I am here doing what I do in my personal life, in my work life, when they're very intertwined because I'm a coach, but just the why, and spending so much time away from people, walking at the park because gyms are closed, and finding that gratitude. That was a huge word for myself and our team this year, is being grateful. Grateful that I have the opportunity to go to a park and walk and enjoy the weather, and grateful that I do have my job and I am able to continue to help these kids. Well, they're adults, but they're all really kids. And
So are you.
I'm grown. But continuing to just a lot of what Bridget and Amy said, I'm sure Hadz's going to say something great too, but trying to put it into words is to, I know why I do what I do, but putting it to words is hard. And I think coaching and living and being in this pandemic and seeing so much on social media and the news and talking, really going into why we do what we do and being grateful that we can do what we do. That was not really specific at all. I'm not good at words, but that's what I feel I've learned about myself and just life in these past 14, so many months.
I think you put it into words perfectly. You said you figured out your why. You know your why. You know why you're here. You know why people search their whole lives for their why. And
I don't have it all figured out. Don't get me over here. No, I just know my why of this day and time. So let's stop that.
oh, we know if I'm giving you a compliment, you got to accept it.
I'm not good at that.
I'm handing it off to you. You got to carry it over the threshold, bring it into the end zone.
All right, it's in my screen now. Okay, sorry.
All right. Hadj, what did you learn about yourself in this? You know, we learned stuff about each other before the pandemic. We realized that you and I are the smartest people when it comes to cereal and cereal combinations.
All the time. And time of day to eat said cereal.
And time of day. Robin Williams said, if you eat after 4 p.m., you're a drug addict. And neither Hadj nor I am, but we eat Lucky Charms at all times of the day.
That's fine. In the PM.
Cheerios with the Rice Krispies and putting it all together. And we've had some really good conversations about cereal. So besides understanding that our cereal game is on point and we could change the world slowly but surely that way, what did you learn about yourself these past 14? Emily, you're right. I'm not saying 14. 14 is too many.
I went all the way back to the Kobe tragedy.
Yeah, down in January 26th.
That's when it started. That's when it started.
It was like everybody, and it was like every time someone passed away in the past 14 months, it was like some incredible, iconic person. So, all right, Hadj, I don't want to, 14 is making me really sick to my stomach, but what have you learned about yourself?
It's similar to what these guys are saying. It's trying to figure out, all right, who actually are you at your core? You know what I mean? I think on the positive side for me, it wasn't always a positive, but I realized how to have a better relationship with my job, because I think so many times as a coach, your job is giving to other people and giving to so many different tasks and not actually taking a chance to realize you're a human who also has to take care of themselves. And when you get stuck in this pandemic plus some, and you like, I forget who said it, we all like live alone and you're just hanging out and you are stuck by yourself. And the thing that I would always pour myself into is, all right, my team. All right, well, you don't have that. Like you have that, but you don't have that. You don't get to escape and go do the fun distractions of practice, or you don't have a specific plan. Like coaches, we are plan oriented. We have plans about our plans, and then we make plans when we're going to make our plans about the plans we're going to plan. So when you don't have that there to know when it's coming back, you have to, again, figure out people, figure out core and take care of who you can and have those important conversations. And then you are forced to do it with yourself. I know, Dan, you and I also talked about like finding ways to do that. And it's the getting outside. I realized how much I need to get outside. I know how much I need to just take care of myself. Like that's why the whole snowboarding thing happened. It's I have to get outside. I don't have a season. I need to feel competitive in something. Because you have to. So I think for me, I learned how to have a better relationship of where to allocate my energy into my job, like what is as important and what isn't. So I always knew that the players were important. I always knew having those types of serious conversations are important and showing up for the people in your personal lives, but you let those things kind of get away. I know it's the whole pandemic's been terrible for a lot of people, but from on my side of things, like I was able to reconnect with the people that matter and the people that refill me. And I was able to get outside and do all of that. So I think I learned how to have a better relationship with my job so I can be far more effective in my job, where I know now what doesn't matter. Like we got all that stuff stripped away and none of it matters. And so, and it was different because like these guys, they had games and they had stuff that they got to kind of crack their head against the wall to figure out how to logistically make some things happen. And our team, it stinks, and our players had so much taken away from their college experience, and basketball is a huge chunk of it. But our team didn't stop for a second, I think, because we all were able to, and I think they kind of reflect me, if I would have been stressed about it, then they're going to be more stressed about it. So the fact that I was able to learn how to manage it, I was able to help them manage it and find out what's important.
Yeah, and I think, and you're right, we did talk about that. And, that was something this week was important to me to get out on the court today. And
you're at your streak still?
So my walking has continued. I had this very awesome thing happen. And by awesome, I'm being very sarcastic. My heart was doing a weird jump. So I went to the doctor and he's like, yeah, your EKG looks off. And I was like, okay. Didn't really explain it to me. He's like, I'm going to send you to the hospital and I'm going to send you in an ambulance because I want them to take it seriously, but he's not telling me why. So I go in, they run all these tests. Long story short, all the blood work, like 30 EKGs, catheter, looking at everything. There's absolutely nothing wrong with me. Nothing wrong with my heart, nothing physical. But I go back in for my follow-up and the doc goes, I'm going to print it out and show it to you. He goes, you see where it goes up like that? I was like, yeah. He goes, it's not supposed to go that high. He said, you see where it goes down? It's not supposed to dip that low. And I'm like, what does this mean? He goes, well, you look like you had a heart attack. That's why I was nervous. And I didn't. But if I've learned anything about my life, and I'm very honest on my show, and Hadj, you know this well, I've let other people rent loft apartments in the house that is my brain. And I no longer allow them to be for rent. I bought the house, I own the house, and I'm the only one sitting on the couch now. And I think that it's a constant working thing, but healthy mind, healthy body, I dedicated the last year to it. I'm in the best shape of my life because I made the decision to be. So I am competitive, and I went out on the court, and the corner three is my favorite shot. And it's the hardest one to make because there's really nothing to go off of. And so I just kept shooting it until I made it. And when I finally made it, I ended up making 5 shots in a row. And then I knew well enough to leave the court. So, but it's that's what life is. It's pushing through. And every time I missed the shot, it made me want to make it the next time. And I knew that I was and I was looking at the positives. I'm running, I'm getting steps in, I'm getting my cardio in, I'm outside, I'm healthy, my legs work, I didn't have a heart attack, my brain's clear. So I think it's an everyday thing. But what I've learned most about myself is I have a strong faith. And it's that, if people are saying things destructively, negatively, and if they're spitting out hate speech, then I know that that doesn't come from God. And if it doesn't come from God, then I don't need to listen to it. So it's a battle every day, but it makes me feel good that healthy mind, healthy body is a real thing. And if you want something in your life, you can get it. So with that being said, it's time for rapid fire. And we're going to go around the horn here. I get to ask each of you 2, but on my show, which no other broadcaster I know in the history of mankind has done this, you get to ask me questions. So I put myself on the hot seat knowingly and unapologetically, very happily. So to the coaches out there and the SID, you never get to ask questions, ever. You always get asked the questions. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to flip the script. I will ask you, and then you'll ask me. We'll have 2 apiece. So I will start things off with Amy. I will defer to you. You can ask me something, and then I'll have a question for you.
Oh, I can ask you something. What's your favorite pizza?
Oh, man.
Good question.
That is a great question because I'm a Ninja Turtle at heart. I probably would default to say, like, I love pepperoni, but I love like a white pizza with the rigot and like with no sauce, the rigot, put the cheese on top and then put something on top of that. So I'd probably have to say white pizza or traditional pepperoni. But if I'm going to a new place, because part of my blood is Italian, if I'm going anywhere new, I'm getting a cheese slice because that is my litmus test. If you can impress me with that, I'll go deeper into it. But if you mess up the cheese, I'm never coming back again.
Fair enough. I like that.
So, and that brings me to Old Forge Pizza. Cheddar cheese is not real pizza. We all know that.
I'm out. I'm just kidding.
I don't know anything about that.
Will you get pizza, Bridget? No.
No, it's fine. I don't even really like Gold Forge pizza. I like Scranton pizza.
Okay, fair enough. But if you put cheddar cheese and ragu, it's not pizza. So
Not
Amy, my first question for you is, let's keep it with food. Well, let me ask you this. Do you like to cook? Is that something you enjoy?
I love to cook.
Okay. Favorite meal that you can make every day?
Ooh, every day? Okay, can I get 2 seasons?
Yeah.
I have a summer meal. So I started making a pineapple barbecue chicken over the summer, like a kebab on the grill with sweet potato fries on the grill and Brussels sprouts. That's by far, like, I probably had that twice a week all summer. Quarantine was great for trying new things. And my favorite, like, comfort food winter meal that I actually don't make that often, it's like for when I'm having a bad day, is my mom's tuna casserole. And it's 6 ingredients. It's super easy, but it's so good. But I do cook more interesting things than that too.
All right. No, I like those. Those are awesome. The summer one, anything on a grill, like literally anything on a grill is the way to go. Miss Emily, I will defer to you for the first one you have for me.
I would like to know, what was your quarantine show of choice?
Oh, this is easy. And Hadj, did I tell you this? I don't know if I did or not. So
I know we talked about it.
So I have never seen Game of Thrones.
Me
And
neither.
so here's the cool thing about it. When it all started, I had 8 seasons. When everybody had like nothing to watch and nothing to do, I somehow, and I do an entertainment show called Super Powered Pop, and we go out to Comic Cons and we interview actors and actresses. Somehow within the last decade, I've stayed away from, I didn't know anything. I knew winter is coming. I knew Jon Snow's name. But I didn't know anything about anything. And I don't know how I did it, especially at like New York Comic Con, but I did. So I got to watch the show as if, like, I watched the show as like an innocent child that was just born. And I saw it all the way through, and I feel the same way that most people feel. Everything was amazing until the last 2 episodes. 15 minutes ruined an entire series, which is so true. And my man Bran Muffin, there's a lot of problems I have with Bran, and but and I had a kill list. I'm a very peaceful man, but I had this is who has to get murdered, and this is my team that has to make it to the end.
We ran a death pool with my friend group.
Yeah, everybody had that list.
Okay, that's good, and at the top of my list was Joffrey and Ramsay. So
more than Cersei.
Cersei was 3rd. She was 1, and then Joffrey is like a high. I played back for him and Ramsay, I played back their murder scenes multiple times.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's so satisfying.
Yeah, like I ate a chicken and biscuits while I watched Ramsay get beaten up. It was very nice. So my show of choice was Game of Thrones. Emily, I would have to say it brought me through a couple, like 2-3 months, because I staggered it. Let me see. For you, Emily, okay, I'm gonna keep with your theme. What is the movie during quarantine that you could just keep watching?
Well, I don't know if I really had a choice, but between Grown Ups and Pitch Perfect 3, they were constantly rotated on the channels. So we watched those a lot. But we like to watch like a movie every Friday night, see what's hot on Netflix. So we'll pick that. But definitely a lot of Grown Ups 2, and Pitch Perfect 3.
I think it's funny that it was Pitch Perfect 3.
I know. Not even, well, at first, at the very beginning, we were trying to find it, and we couldn't find it anywhere. And then it was played repeatedly for the next 8 months.
Yeah, FX is notorious for getting obsessed with a movie and just playing it repeatedly, which Grown Ups, that's a Netflix choice. All right, or not Netflix, pardon me, FX. Bridget, what is your first one for me?
If you could like have one skill in life and be elite at it, what would it be?
Well, I would tell you that I don't live with regrets and I live in the moment. So I would tell you that the skill that I would take is the one I have. So I truly believe, whether it's working on my music, screenwriting, comedy, or shows, I believe that I have the ability to speak to anyone, anywhere, and make them feel safe, respected, and appreciated, because they are safe and respected and appreciated. I think my honesty precedes me. I think people can see through me to my soul, and they kind of know what I'm about to my core. So I would tell you that the gift that God gave me is the ability to talk to anybody about anything at any time and let them know that someone is hearing them, even if they feel like they're screaming in a giant black hole, that somebody can hear them and somebody wants to tell their story. So I am a storyteller, and that's the talent that I'll take in whatever walk of life I'm in.
It's a pretty good one. Not everybody has that, so
And I
I'd roll with it.
appreciate
I'd roll with it.
it. My first one for you, Bridget, is that because you are so driven, and because I get like an energy vibration from you that you're
Sure.
going very far.
Well,
Will
thank
you
you.
be running Division 3 at one point?
Oh, running Division 3. I don't know if I can handle that much pressure in my life. Definitely, I'd like to run maybe a conference of Division 3. Go MAC conference. Let's go. Call me. Next time Ken Andrews comes rolling around. Just kidding. But definitely not all of Division 3. I think that's just too much craziness for one person.
I think Hodge disagrees with you. I think she thinks you can do it. That was her response on the screen here. But thank you for the answer. Just let me have the exclusive when you get the job. That's all.
Yes, of course, 1000%. I'm writing it down right now.
Okay. Hodge, what's your first one for me?
You said Ninja Turtles before. Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle and why?
He's the fun-loving, nunchucking, incredible pizza-eating comedian Michelangelo. And there's nothing better. Even with the new movies that were not that great, I just remember when they're in that. My favorite, and this kind of says a lot about the two movies, the new ones. My favorite part of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when they brought them back was the elevator scene in the first one, where they just start like playing on stuff, and all you hear is him go, MC Mikey. And that's it. Like, it's just that little hit. And I also like that he used to get in trouble with Splinter all the time. And the nunchuck story is cool. My godmother, and to my Aunt Elaine, it's over the 5 years of the statute of limitations is well over. But she had candles that she would hang, and they were connected by a string. So they were like mini nunchucks. So when I played Michelangelo, I would play with those, and I don't know how many of them I broke, but she always restored them for me. So that was nice of her. My one for you, Hodge, is if you could be any cartoon character ever, who would you choose and why?
Ever? Sweet. That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for it. I'm gonna go. Let's stay with the Ninja Turtles theme, man. I would be probably maybe Donatello. You can be
facility monitor.
super smart problem solver. Let's go that route.
You're gonna go with who?
Donatello. That would be my guess. He gets to beat stuff with a stick. He's a smart one. It's a good time.
Fair enough. I'm going to go around here in a different order now to finish up. Emily, I'll go back to you here. What's your last one for me?
Ooh, let's go. Superpower can't be flight or speed. What would you choose?
Tough mine.
The thing that's tough is that I love like the angel wing things, and I love the flight side. And my favorite DC character is the Flash. So it's also my favorite show on television. It's the show on TV, like actual TV, that nobody can bother me at that time. Like, I will actually physically watch. I used to host trivia on Tuesday nights, and I stopped hosting on Tuesday nights because the Flash is on at 8:00. So I would say if I can't have speed or flight, I would have teleportation. I would have said in the past, but I actually created a character at Marywood for a show that I like, a fake show that I made that I really would want to do in real life. And it was a show where the premise is the character had the power to heal, but he could heal anything. This character. So I envision myself as this character kind of going around, and he thinks he dies. He's in a car accident. He gets hit by a car, and he wakes up in his bed, and he has no idea how he got there. And his backstory is kind of told over time, but he has the power to put his hand on anybody and take any of their pain. It could be depression, it could be cancer, it could be a broken leg, it could be whatever, it could be heartache, but when the caveat to it is that when he takes that pain, he absorbs it temporarily. So he can't cure everybody. So there was going to be episodes where, like, if he's in a burning building, he can't cure everybody's wound at the same time because it'll kill him. So there's this whole thing about the notion of wanting to heal the world, and at what price are you willing to pay? Is he willing to die again to save a life? So, and if anybody takes that, it's copyright and TM. That's my show. So my question for you, Emily, is, okay, how about you could trade lives with any current superhero? Who would it be and why?
Oh. I don't know a lot of superheroes. I really don't. My friends make fun of me because I haven't watched any of the movies.
I'll do this. I'll say, if you could trade lives with anybody for a day, who would it be and why?
I think it would depend on the day, but someone who I would like to walk a day in their shoes would probably be I think in the past it was probably Michelle Obama. Maybe not as first lady is probably what I would do. But I mean, I would also like Simone Biles. Like, I could be that athletic. Like, that'd be really cool. And my PC is running low, so there's my answer.
Fair enough. Bridget, what's your last one for me?
What was your favorite board game growing up as a kid?
I feel like I was really good at, like, I got to the point where I felt like I could guess it when the game started without even playing the game. I felt like I could see through the thing, and that's Clue. I would say Clue. Clue I'm good at. I like the game Trouble. I liked basic games, and my grandmother that lived to be almost 101, I call her G Mama. She and I would always play War, which is just this card game that we always just would play all the time. We'd play it for hours, and I would get like almost the entire deck, and then she would come back because she had 3 aces, and we would just play forever. And on her 100th birthday, she sat at the table and played with me until 10:30, and everybody was like telling me, like, make her go to bed, she should go to sleep. And I looked at her, I was like, you tired? She goes, no, you? And I go, no. And she goes, okay. And we played until everybody else went to bed. We stayed up and played the game, and I think that was the last time we played. So I will never regret the fact that we let that game go as long as we let it go.
It's a good story.
Thank
Keep
you.
that one.
I will. Yeah, I keep her very close. Bridget, mine for you is, okay, going off of that, who do you consider to be your biggest inspiration?
Without sounding like the cheesiest human alive, probably my mom. I'm one of 3, and we all had very different lives growing up. So all the hard work and dedication, she went back to teaching when I was in like 4th grade full time. So for her to be able to give so much to her students every day, and then still be at every single one of my games, or every single one of my sister's dance recitals, or my brother's, crap, what did Matthew do? Band concerts, I don't even know. For her to be able to give all that of herself to other people is just, and still be an amazing person and feel for everybody. It's my mom.
And that's not a cheesy answer. If that's who it is, that's the one. And incredible parents are sometimes there's no comparison to them at
Definitely.
all. I do love the fact that you're like, this is what my one kid looked at it. I have no idea what the other one did. So
sometimes he's the youngest, so sometimes we forget what he does.
That's okay. It's fun. I hope he enjoys when he sees this. So Hodge, what's your last one for me?
Any good recommendations on places to go for a hike up your neck of the woods?
Yeah, there's some places in Oswego, the Bluffs. That's fun. And I'm one of those people that, like, there's like a hook where you can kind of skid your way down, stop yourself, and then eventually get to the water, but then not know how to get back up. I like challenges. So if I wasn't with my dad that day on Father's Day, I probably would have done it. But yeah, I would say Oswego, the Bluffs is cool. and Skinny Atlas. The waterfalls out in Skinny Atlas are really cool. And there's in Ithaca, there's a few places out there too. And I would say Pathfinder Camp near Cooperstown, where I used to go every summer. There's a mountain named after a Native American, and it's called Natty Bumppo, and that we climb that every summer in August. So that was really cool too. So I would say that.
Add them to the list.
All right, Hodge. What is the greatest piece of advice you've ever been given?
So the first one that came to my mind was I was at Marywood, and I can't even tell you the professor's name anymore. She taught in the English department, and we were all sitting there doing something, whatever it was, and then she just sat down and was like, listen, I'm going to tell you guys something that'll get you through your day. And we're like, okay, like what and she was talking about how she had like just like a crappy drive to work, and how the way that she got herself out of it was to treat every single person like they're having the worst day of their life. She's like, I was pissed off in my car, and then it's because this guy cut out in front of me. He's like, and then I realized, well, what if he cut out in front of me because he's rushing to the hospital because somebody he knows is not well and he's got to get there. And you being pissed off is only going to make it worse. Or you're talking to somebody and you say something rude and you don't realize what they're going through at home. So it's the literally treat every person like it is the worst day of their life.
That's incredible. And that's
basic. It covers it all.
It does. I mean, there's really nothing to say after that. That's a mic dropping statement by that teacher.
Yep. She crushed it.
All right, Amy, what's your final one for me?
Other than a religious book, if you could only read one book for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and It's All Small Stuff. That book, which is right next to my bed. As a reminder, because I take notes, and then when I forget what I learned, I have to go back to it. So I would say that Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and It's All Small Stuff. You had a unique response to Emily's inability to name a superhero. So I will say to you, if you could be any superhero, who would you be and why?
Oh, I love Ant-Man. He's my favorite because he can go anywhere and he's small and fast and he can hide. And it's like being a fly on the wall. Like if you're Ant-Man, like you can hang out in the Oval Office and see what's going on. Like I just think it's awesome. So that would be easily my favorite superhero.
Fair enough. I like that. Ant-Man. And it's the first time that anybody's ever given him some respect. So
it's because he's a little guy. They're mean to him. I mean, I'm short.
They don't respect him.
No.
So for Amy Sokaitis here with head coach Lebanon Valley, as well as Emily O'Donnell, the assistant coach of the Coast Guard, Bridget Walsh, assistant SID at King's College, and Caitlin Hadzimichalis here with us from the King's College head coaching side for women's basketball. I want to thank each of you for your time, and I look forward to doing this again. Y'all just like made me want to make this show be like 5 hours. So thank you for the experience. Thank you for the laughs. Thank you for the really great information we got to put out here. And thank you above everything else for being people in sports. You realize what I said there, Emily? People, not women, and in sports, not women's sports. So keep doing what you're doing. And thank you all so much for making this such an incredible conversation. And I hope that it moves somebody as you move me today.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks so much,
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.